Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Adobe Office Hours.
What is up? How's it going, dude?
What's
How are
up?
you?
I'm doing great. It's a good day, a good Friday, and it's definitely hot in Southern California right now. But
Oh my gosh, it is. I
middle of the
know.
summer, that's how it works. I was on a call the other day, and I introduced myself and didn't use the correct pronunciations and punctuation. And I said, "My name's Andrew. I'm from Southern California. I'm hot, sweaty, and currently on fire." And I was like, "Well, I should have said that California was those things, and not me." Welcome back to the show, everybody.
It is Friday though, so we're excited.
It
Excited to
is.
be here.
Yes, it was a fun time. So today is going to be a very special show. I'm actually really excited. It's going to be like a conversation. And I think that we have a lot
Yeah.
of conversations on the show, but today is going to be a little bit of back and forth. And we're going to start with just kind of a follow up from last week, I guess. Nick, what did we do last week? What was the thing that happened last week?
We had our great little design challenge. That was kind of fun to kind of put out there. That was the fastest hour I think we've had yet because it was like live, not only you and I kind of working on some design challenge together, but seeing what you guys did and putting it into the homework. That was great. Some good
Yes,
stuff.
it was super fun. So we have some stuff to look at there. And I want to shout out real quick our Discord. So our Discord is bit.ly/capital OH and then lowercase cabin chat. Bit.ly/OH cabin chat. You can join that Discord, and that's where people post work, they get feedback, and we even, as you saw, feature some of them on this show. And that is where the voice chat is as well. If you want to hang out during the live show and chat with some friends, chat with us maybe even, you can tune in and hop in there. It happens pretty much every show when we're live here on Fridays. So Nick, following
Yeah.
up from last week, I want to talk about what we did. So last week we did a design challenge, and we were working on a new Office Hours logo, and Nick's logo was amazing, right? We were working side and side. I was super insecure about what I was working on. I didn't like it. I was like, oh my goodness, Nick is like leaving me in the dust. He's so good. This is amazing. And so we finished the show, and I was like, dude, he is so good. And then I started to get like this crazy imposter syndrome, right? And so then I started to research like a little bit more about Nick. And we've done this show for a long time.
Yeah.
And I started like dig a little deeper and found out like Nick's got this whole thing running. He's got the podcast. He's got all these case studies. He's like running a full business. And then I had like this full breakdown for like 4 days. Like straight breakdown for 4 days, thinking, oh my gosh, I need to redo everything. Like, I don't practice what I preach. Like, Nick is the real deal and I'm totally not. Like, oh man, I need to like rethink my entire career. Like, I'm totally failing. And I thought that that was an interesting place to come into today's episode with, because we talked a little bit offline before the show about where I was in those feelings. And what was your
But
kind of
what
zone hearing that?
what did I tell? And thank you for that because I really, we all appreciate hearing good stuff. But what was the first thing I told you after you told me that? I felt the exact same way. And a lot of times, I'm never looking at work going like this is really coming along nicely. Like you know what I mean? Particularly in a quick sprint like that, right?
Yep.
So it's funny how we all have these things and the bridge we want to talk about today is kind of this idea of like you being this leader in our industry amongst your colleagues, amongst all of us, amongst Discord, amongst your buddy, and really find ways to help each other elevate and grow and never feel that way, right? Because it really links to that imposter syndrome thing.
Yep, exactly. And it was something that for me became an opportunity to ask Nick to lead me on something, right? Hey, can you give me feedback? Can you help me like level my game up, step up to the next thing? But then also like, hey, I need some leadership in like me being stuck in a zone for 4 days of like feeling like super imposter syndrome, of being able to have that conversation and have him lead me out of that zone and give me some good advice. So we're
That's a
talking
great
about,
way to say it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, leading ourselves as well as being able to lead others, and then being able to like lead together, which I think is a cool thing, and a concept that we'll talk about today, that it's not just one person leading another, that it's both of them leading each other, right? Ooh.
Yeah, because let's face it, no one person can win at anything or even lose it in that point. You know what I mean? It's all about, even if you work independent, even if you're a student right now, there are these ways that you can kind of take a lot of this leadership expertise and advice and take it into your normal day and with the call, particularly in the virtual world too, right? We do that every day. That's the coolest part.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go ahead and hop in. We're calling this episode Leaderception. I just thought of that right now. So that's going to be the title of this episode, Leaderception. I know it's probably titled something different, but like ignore that. Leaderception now.
Gotcha.
So let's hop in, Nick, and let's talk quite a bit about leadership. We're going to give you some advice, and we're also going to tell a lot of personal stories because I think it's something that we've both struggled with and thrived on in different ways. So leadership is not like, I think, an easy conversation. It's just pure chaos the entire time.
Yeah, yeah. And as we're going through this, guys, if you have any questions regarding a particular moment or segment we're talking about, we don't have 1,000 screens going today, so we can keep an eye on chat and really get the conversation going with you guys as well.
And if you ever have questions as well, you can always drop them in Discord. If you think of something throughout the week, or you're on a walk and you're like, you know what, they said this thing that made me do something with my life. Drop it in Discord. Again, bit.ly/OH cabin chat, and the OH is capital. All right, Nick, let's hop in. First point, I'll just ask you because you got some good answers on this. Why is leadership important? Why leadership?
I look back at any leader that I had at maybe a job or some environment where someone was in a lead role and was doing a really good job at it. And in some cases, maybe even the ones that weren't. But you can actually inspire everybody around you by being that great leader. And you know that term, like it trickles down, right? Like that starts with this idea that if the source, if the leader, if the person up above has these things, sees a vision, knows how to motivate people, then everyone, it's literally like, everyone will catch it because that's the tone that's been set. So I think a lot of times you don't have to be the leader to show leadership skills and leadership traits, right? You could inspire people that just in a phone call or a conversation with each other. Yep. So with those right conditions, you get better work, better morale, better culture, and you can actually achieve really amazing results when it comes to what the creative is that you as the team put together.
Yeah, and I think that leadership is super important as well in a way that sometimes it's less about being like the perfect fit, and sometimes it's just about like filling a space, right? I love to tell this story. I saw an interview with Lady Gaga, and she said that at her shows she's always like dressed up crazy and acts all like over the top and stuff, and she's like, a lot of that is so that I can be the weirdest one in the room, and I can allow other people who feel insecure about being weird to be able to just be weird because I'm always weirder. And so I think that we think of leadership a lot of times as like, ooh, they're the most prestigious executive, but sometimes leadership is no, it's the person just filling a space to be able to allow other people to have space.
Yeah, I love to say too, I think the people I've admired that have been in that role and I've looked at and said like, wow, like there's someone I can kind of model myself after, learn from. Those were the people that did something very similar to what you just said, where they put the stake in as who they were in the room without being the leader. They did it with the right knowledge, the right empathy, you name it, right? It could be anything that inspired them to be that. And if you just look at them in that perception, then that person becomes the leader in whatever you're considering, right?
Yep.
I remember one boss that would do the same thing, and he let it known every time that something great was done by the team. He would make sure it was specifically called out to that person. He never took the credit. Then I had bosses that did do that. They took the credit, went to the people above him, and never really mentioned it to that who on the team actually did the great work. So to me, that was a great example of like, wow, that person put their stake in the ground, explained exactly the truth, and got kudos for it. From everybody.
And we have a couple points, right? Can we recap kind of some of this stuff that we have outlined to just give general overview?
Yeah, perfect. So first one is you can create a vision and keep everyone motivated to make it a reality, right? That's the best part about it. Then a good leader can inspire everyone to be in that organization, achieve the very, very best that they can. The third one we have is basically inspiring people just overall, right? It can create the right conditions, like I said earlier, and give you a much better result, and you achieve these incredible achievements with any project you're working on.
And I love that leadership a lot of times is planting a seed and then just stepping out of the way, right?
Ooh, good way to look at it. Yeah.
Right, yeah, you inspire people and then you say, hey, I have led you up until this point. I am now giving you the reins to lead me. Have you ever had a project or a situation like that to where you basically like inspired someone and they came back with an idea and you're like, oh shoot, you're the lead now. Like, let's
Yes.
go.
Yeah. And see, I think that's the other thing too, is a leader is going to look for the next leader behind them, right? That's their job, is to kind of nurture the next in line. So if you show those tendencies, that's how you get to someone taking a risk or taking a chance on you,
Yep,
you
absolutely. And
know?
I think that I had so many opportunities from great leaders in my life that would inspire me, give me feedback, but then let me
Yes,
run and then support from the other side. And I think that that's not necessarily always like you have to be in the limelight. Sometimes it is my job, and the most successful leadership I can have is building a platform for someone else, and almost, being the base of the human pyramid so that someone can climb up and get
exactly.
on top, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, cool, we all are doing this together, and teamwork and leadership go hand in hand.
Yeah. And I love when someone did take that chance. And there were a few times that I even went, wow, I could totally mess this up, but I knew that you had their support, which made you even do better in some way, right? But even if you did fail, I think that a lot of times someone giving you that opportunity to fail or make the wrong move or whatever, those are those learning moments every
Yep.
time for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a great write in from Justin Roy. You are the shoe craftsman, and I am just about to polish that awesome shoe that you have created. Yes. A
There you
hundred
go.
percent. Yes. I like to relate it, same idea, that creativity is really just building a good hat rack, right? People have their own hats, their own experiences, their own stories. And a lot of times, as creatives, to lead them into an experience, we just make them a really cool hat rack, and then they hang up whatever they have on the way that we have provided for them to hang it. So it's
Exactly.
creating feelings, creating emotions, and creating memories.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, question.
Yes, question coming in. Go ahead.
Why do people who have a bad experience with leadership pass those experiences on to the, well, that's exactly, it's the same thing as if you had a good example and a good experience, right? You
Yes.
learn from association. It's just like you said, you always hear someone's got to come in and break the cycle. And I think that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because if it's beyond your control and you've tried everything, or you've even gone to maybe like, God forbid, you had to go to like HR or something like that and do something like that, and there's no solution, it's your choice to leave, right? Like, it's a kind of like one of those things where you deserve a better situation than that. I hear that so often with my students that get into some of these entry level jobs, and they're not nurturing them to get better and to grow. After 6 months, they're like, I might do some great work here, but I'm not fulfilled. So it's not money, and it's not the work you're working on at the bottom line. It's how happy you are.
Yeah, and I think
Very true.
I see a lot of things being written in, and this is again something that I love to do. If I see a trend that's being written in it, I like to call it out and I like to give my opinion on it. So it seems like a couple people are saying, I'm late, leaders aren't late. We have the idea of bad experience being passed down to bad generations. That there is this idea that seems to be happening in chat, is that the idea of a leader needs to be one thing. In my opinion on this, you can take it or leave it, is that no leader has to be in any way, right? No leader
Mm-hmm.
has to be any specific thing. Leaders can be late. Leaders can be super mean to their teams. Leaders can be in any way of any sort of thing. That doesn't mean that they're not leading, right?
Yeah.
And they aren't leading in a specific way. I think the idea of, this is a hot take. Oh, I'm about to give a super hot take.
Yeah.
I think the
Uh
idea
oh.
of leadership as a general idea, right, that we hear about being a good leader without specificity, I think that that doesn't exist, and it doesn't matter. That conversation
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter unless you're talking about leading in a specific way, or having like a specific action to that leadership, right? I don't think that there is anyone that is just a leader. They are leading in some way.
Yeah.
Is that a
And
hot take?
I mean, yeah, I think that's a great hot take, because perfect example is, if anybody's read the Steve Jobs biography, it's an exact kind of example of that. He was probably one of the best leaders ever. Was he the best person to work with or work under? Absolutely not. But you again, those people had the choice to work with him or not. Now, some of them have led to become great leaders because they worked under him. So anybody who was a direct report of him, you now listen to them now, these are some of the most enriched best leaders out there in the tech world, so a great book to read for sure if you want to hear about leadership.
Yes.
Crazy.
And speaking of that, if you want to learn about leadership, here's our next question going in. Do
Yeah.
you want to be a leader?
We
I-
thought of this right at the beginning, right? Like,
I-
wait a minute.
yeah.
We're just assuming everybody wants to be a leader.
Yeah, I love when we intro into like points that are just questions, because it just opens that conversation. Yes, I think that's a question. Do you actually want to be a leader? Nick, do you have any stories? Because I know I have a personal story, but I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on this.
Oh, my first 5 years or so in my first few jobs, that's all I wanted. I think it comes from just your upbringing, kind of, I don't know what it was, why I had that desire. I think it was, I'll be completely honest, it was probably money. Because I remember someone explaining to me, you could be a graphic designer and be in this cube for the rest of your life if you want to. But if you want to excel, you have to move up in this corporate ladder. And that means title changes, responsibility, and it gets to this thing. And now you're more of a leader, from manager to director and everything else. And I took that path and I learned the hard way. I think at the end of it, I realized it wasn't about being a leader that was so important. It was truly having a team, having culture, having success as a group. It went from a solo thing to a group thing for me. And I think that was the best lesson I can learn throughout that thing. But I think that was my honest answer as far as why I wanted to become a leader.
What about you? Coin.
Exactly. Hey, but that's what we're told through school and everything, right? And achieve and do better and climb the ladder. That should exist in our industry the same way it does in every other industry.
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny because I didn't think that I was as passionate about this idea as I am. And I'm like excited because I'm getting all sweaty and like into it. So we're gonna have lots of hot takes today. So I think this is what I was talking about with the idea of like the ethereal leader, right? Do you want to be a leader? This is the thing that like I get so mad about, because I wasted a lot of my career and a lot of time chasing this idea of leadership and being a leader, and all kinds of trainings and seminars and all that stuff for an idea that wasn't necessarily something that was applicable or had any goal, right? I just kind of ran. And so this, for me, I wanted to be the director. I wanted to be the lead. I wanted to have people under me. I wanted to be the person. I wanted the status. And for me, it wasn't about the money. It was about the affirmation. It was about me doubting myself and then being like, oh man, if I am a leader or reach this goal of being a leader, which was undefined, then I will have made it. And then I can stop talking bad about myself because I will be affirmed in being a leader. But looking back, now that I've moved past that and I don't really care about the idea of being a leader, that I'm like, oh, I'm leading myself to be the most me. And the most me is not being a director. It's not having people under me. It's thriving on my own, being able to chase my dreams, being able to build my career. All those things were focused on leading myself instead of leading others. And that was a big shift for me, realizing I don't want to be a leader in the idea of leader. I want to lead myself, right? Practical application.
And I think that sounds so much more relevant to today, where everyone has this desire for the prestige, the whatever, but it doesn't have to come with you being just this leader. You're right. You're almost saying, if I look at myself individually, am I leading in the right direction, in the right course, with the right people, with the right companies or whatever it might be? And you're right. So I love that we are almost debunking this thing like lead, grow, promotion. That's not what should be the overarching kind of dangling carrot.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And that's I think my like takeaway, hopefully your takeaway from this episode is that, and again, this is such a hot take, leadership doesn't exist. Like it's an idea, it's an abstract idea. Yeah. I think leading with an action verb or specificity after that is a thing, but I think this idea of leadership doesn't exist. I think we talk about it a lot, but it's just an idea.
It's characteristics, it's the way you treat people, it's your communication.
Yes.
All the things that make it up, that's the truth. I think you can bundle it and say it all becomes what leadership's defined as. But I'm glad you said that, because I think you're right. the best leaders have also delegated. The best leaders have also allowed others to be responsible. Put the spotlight on them, right? Like that. To me, that's truly what a leader is, because I've seen both sides of this conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a write in here. Hawk, now as a teacher, that's certainly self-validating and fulfilling, right? Yes and no. I would say almost no, because I try not to validate myself on the things that I do. I try to validate myself on who I am and if I'm happy. That was a big shift in my career, was not focusing on pleasing clients, getting work done of what I do with so much of my identity. I've helped to separate that and said, you know what? Am I happy? Yes. Okay, cool. Then that's great. And that's the validation that I need. And I'm leading myself well if I'm leading myself into a positive place. So yes, the validation comes from me leading myself into a happier place.
There you go.
All right.
That's probably good.
Speaking about leading ourselves, next up, there is another side of this. As creatives, like I said, we have a lot of clients. We have a lot of problems with them. We need to take them somewhere. So let's talk about leadership in the terms of leading your clients. Nick, how do you do this? What do you do this? Why do you do this?
Yeah, this is a broad stroke too, guys. This could be your professor. This could be your first boss. This could be the team leader. This could be a actual client that your company that you work for has, or in like maybe our cases, our actual client, the folks that we are on the phone with talking each day. And what I like to think about with this is, we have talked about this so many times. Graphic designers, artists, creatives, all of us here in chat, myself and Andrew, we never want to just be known as those people that are just the creative, right? There's so many other facets that are involved in this thing. And the best things that we see that get engagement and everything throughout social media and everything are when people talk about client relations, customer service, better communication, all of these things, you guiding. How many times have we said holding the hand of the client, right?
Oh, that is the theme of this show, is if you're talking about clients, you need to hold their hand through the story.
Exactly. So you want the same respect as if when you walk into your doctor's office and the doctor prescribes you something, you take that and say, well, that was given to me by a doctor. I might get a second opinion, but you're going to take that info and go and do what it needs to happen. You want that same respect as a designer and as a creative, right? Someone should come to you and say, like, Andrew, I'm doing branding for this. Help me, guide me along the way. So you being a better leader to your clients revolves around the first thing first, like I just said, listening to them and their problem, and you finding the solution.
Yes.
So
and it's literally
right?
the conversation that we had, again, going into the imposter syndrome of feeling right, that I'm coming to Nick and saying, hey, Nick, I'm having this problem. I'm feeling a certain way. I'm trying to go somewhere else. Can you lead me or help lead me to that place, right? I know that Nick has a lot of students. He's super professional, works with clients well. And so I'm like, oh, I'm stuck in this place that I know Nick can help lead me out of. I would like your help leading me there, right? That's the conversation we need to have with clients is, hey, you're having this issue or you're coming to me with this issue. I can help lead you to the place you're trying to go.
Yep. And I could tell you, I think every problem, or anytime I've had anybody say, I'm having this problem with a client. Okay, you can literally reverse it and be like, if you knew the right way to guide them and direct them, you wouldn't probably have that problem. It happens almost every time. You can almost guarantee it. So as an example, if someone came to you for packaging and you just started doing packaging and you're showing them beautiful work, and the guy goes, yes, I love this. Let's run with it. And then the reality of it is no printer in the world can do this at their budget and whatever. Now you've completely lost them. But if you want to be a leader with them at the very beginning, you say, let's talk packaging. Do you have a per package cost? Do we have a vendor already set up to do this? How many inks can we use? Well, so now all of a sudden they're like, whoa, Andrew's the leader here. He's telling us check, check, check. And we get all into these things. So you are giving them your knowledge, your experience, right? It's knowing the industry inside and out.
Yep.
That's truly it, right?
Yeah. Not even just leading them to, cool, here are the things that we're going to do now that would help you. Also, the second point that we want to make, challenging them to grow to the next thing, right? That it's like, hey, here are the things I can help you. Here's X, Y, and Z. Okay, so now that I've led you to the point that you wanted to go, let me lead you or give you a trail guide to continue on. What's the next thing for them? And I think that is like a step above in leading your client, is leading them into the future, right? That leading them to the present of where they should be is one thing, but then being able to lead them in the future without you necessarily being a part, that's huge. It's just like continued leadership.
It's almost extra. It's this extra additive thing that they get from working with you. I always like to think of it as like, wouldn't it be great if just once every week or so, you're the little Tony Robbins to your client and you challenge them to do something bigger and better with their company, with their brand, or whatever it is. And even if it's just in conversation and you throwing out some maybe somewhat obtainable kind of goal or whatever, at least you're getting them to think beyond, because they're so in the weeds. I think your boss, your client, your teacher sometimes too, so in the weeds, right in the details. If you could be this blue sky person every once in a while and just challenge them with something that's going to be something that no one else is doing, do you think they're going to want to continue to work with you? Of course. That's like, you're like this little kind of extra golden nugget you get from them.
Yep.
You know?
And we have a couple things that were written in. One, I predicted this would be the second most watched and listened to episode of the season. I kind of like... Nick and I were both so excited for this episode. We kind of made an outline of what we wanted to talk about. And usually, you know, we get into stuff and it's all this preparation. And we talked before and just said, this episode's just going to be a conversation. And we think it's really important. We both have strong feelings. And it's more fun when we're kind of vulnerable to talk about our lives and how we are experiencing the creative world instead of just trying to give you advice all the time.
I love that. Thanks for saying that. That's great. Yeah.
Another question here is it a kind of quantum tunneling? When did you communicate your strategy just before the design, or do you validate your strategy before?
Oh, it's probably a little bit of both.
Yes.
It's walking them along the thing. So you're giving them, it's that theater. I remember you had that. I think it was one of our first episodes. You were talking about that whole idea of, it's like the opening screen, right? Whatever it is, you're telling a story with each one. And I want each step of the way to be setting up the next step. So there's a little bit of that in all the timing for me. You agree?
I agree. And I think that goes into our next point is staying
perfect.
calm in the face of the storm. I know, right? We're just here for segues. Staying calm in the face of the storm. I think that I've talked about a couple times on the show that I try to brain ninja my clients to where we'll be talking about something and I know where I want them to go, right? That I'll be done with the pitch and the presentation. They haven't seen anything yet, but in our casual conversations, in our emails, I had a client that I was trying to shift their brand. They were a mega church in Northern California and they had church in their name, and I wanted them to take church out of their name and just be called by a one name thing. And so I started writing emails, and in any email or communication, I would like intentionally pull it out. So they start to have that, right? They start to get familiar with that, using it as slang, starting that conversation, and then eventually you get to that pitch. And that goes into staying calm in the face of the storm. I think you need to establish with them that you are leading them somewhere, right? That you are dropping these plants, and then eventually when those plants pay off, at the end and they're like, oh my gosh, it's such a great idea. And you make them think that it was their idea, but you'd been planting it for a month or whatever. When you get hit with a storm, it's much easier to relate with them and have them not see that. I feel like if you're leading them to a certain point, then they go, oh, he's leading us. Everything's going to be okay. You know, he can take the feedback. It's even if we crash and burn, I think it's going to be all right. Even if you're doing the duck thing where you are just like paddling under the water, but up top you're like calm and composed, right?
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. I had a client one time. This is my personal story. I gave the pitch. And it was a group of 6 people that I was pitching to on a Zoom call. And I usually, when I like to do initial concepts, I just screen share and I zoom around my Illustrator artboard. And I'm like, so here's this idea I'm kind of working with. Do you guys like it? No? Okay. What over here? Like, what if we combine this and this? And kind of work live to help them find somewhere that we like with ideas that I've already created. And I got destroyed for a solid 45 minutes.
Wow.
Every idea was terrible. Everyone was like aggressively like against every single idea. And I get off the call, and the leader of this team, who's my direct contact, was like, "Hey dude, like, are you okay? Like, do we need to like start over on like the complete do we need to like completely start over from the drawing board?" And me, who is freaking out that I'm like, I have no ideas left, and I'm so far into this project that I need to have something. This is what I respond with. No, this happens all the time. It's part of the process that like we get feedback and we kind of adapt. And I really feel like I've gotten a lot of good information, and it's just a part of the process. I'll keep going forward and come back with the new ideas, right? That you need to stay calm, because even though you're freaking out in that moment, you need to lead your client and yourself into the next step of your process, right? Which is revisions.
Yeah.
You know that you're going to have revisions. So don't freak out and be like, oh no, I have to start over. Lead yourself well and say, hey, Andrew, calm down. The next step of the process is to do revisions. So let's just take this step into the next step of the process and do some revisions.
Yeah. It might even be like, you can look at it this way. Sometimes I've looked at it and said, the calmer I am with them, the better the transition from whatever phase we're at now in this problem to the next one. So it's almost, it helps me if I'm calmer too, not just them. But one of the best compliments I ever got from a client was after the grand opening, after a whole year of working on something, pulled me aside and just said, if it wasn't for you, I would have bailed from this about 5 times. And so like, again, it tells you like you can be that partner, you could be that support, you could be that ear sometimes. I think, we all have been there sometimes too, where it's like, now you're a therapist to the client or whoever you're dealing with. But if they see you in that light, it just pumps up your reputation even more. Don't even worry about the idea of like, are you leading your client? You're just being good for them, right? You're being a support.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. So outside of clients, right, let's move to a broader kind of zone. I know that we have a lot of people that watch and listen that think about how do we influence the community? How do we contribute to the design community in general? How do we kind of work with those around us? The first one, before I literally get into anything, is to join our Discord. What a terrible, I'm so sorry for that
great,
segue. It was really good. bit.ly/OH lowercase cabin chat. Join the Discord, and that is a great place for you to be led by others and give them the opportunity to lead, but as well as lead others as well. So let's hop into the next step, and that is leading others. Where do we want to start here, Nick? I'm still ashamed of that segue.
That was a good one. I was like, where is he going with this? I'm like, shameless.
We're landing that plane.
That was great. That was good. And I just keep seeing baked goods keep showing up in the chat, and that's getting me like ready and hungry as soon as this is done.
Yes.
When the leading with others area, we wanted to, this is kind of the touchy-feely feelings part of this conversation, because again, this might just be any of us. It doesn't, again, take out the fact that you're a leader. It's not that. It's just, what can you do to other creatives, to other people you work with, to just be that better person, to be that person that people want to work with, right? And one thing we were talking about after we had a call after last week's episode was this idea of, do we appreciate each other enough as creatives and this kind of thing? And we could tell when it's probably needed. I love this idea of like putting a lot of good advice out there, and people try it and they go, oh, this worked. Wow, that was great. It solved my little issue, something there. That's it. There's an appreciation with like just even acknowledging when someone needs a little bit of help or whatever it might be. So that's the first thing we wanted to talk about. This idea of like making sure we're helping each other, patting each other on the backs. We have great communities throughout this industry, and it's really great. So that's the first one. Anything you wanted to add to that before we move on?
Kind of. I want to address something that got written in. That William Blanco said, I actually think it's way easier to lead a client because they're in the mindset of seeking your help. On the other hand, a boss might feel in a position where they're always right. Yes. Here's my thought to that, is that a lot of times leading someone doesn't have to end in the destination. Right. So when I worked at a nonprofit for like 8 years, and there was a lot of leading leaders, right? That leaders wanted to do ideas, wanted to go certain ways, wanted to do whatever. And my job was to try to help lead them in a direction that might be more creative, that might kind of resonate better with a specific audience that I was more familiar with. And so sometimes it's not getting them and leading them to the actual destination. It's about getting any kind of progress, right? So over 7-8 years, it was a lot of, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, one step forward, 3 steps back, right? That it's leading incrementally, not necessarily just leading to the end point, right? And it hits a point where you're like, cool, I think that we've gotten to maybe a middle ground and I'm happy with that, right? That I have led a boss, someone above me who is a leader, to a place where we are now kind of leading mutually.
That's a good way to put it. And to be honest with you too, on the flip side, there have been plenty of clients that think they know it all too.
Yes.
And feel their position is, that's a whole other topic. And, finding ways to like fix it. And if it's not, how do you exit it? Like that's a whole other thing, because there's been, I'd say in most cases, the majority of them will listen and trust you, as opposed to, like you're saying, a boss who is probably just going to be, that's a hard one. But there's clients just as stubborn.
Oh, yes. Okay, so going back to leading others, second thing that we want to talk about is having a positive outlook. And I think that this is not necessarily selling that everything is okay all the time. I think that a lot of times it is saying, hey, this sucks right now. I think there's actually a lot of power in like somebody being like, dude, this sucks so bad, and just not being like, it'll be okay and everything's gonna be fine. But there's a lot of power in just being like, yes, this does suck. Being able to say like, it sucks for now, and eventually we'll probably move on, right? We'll get to somewhere that is positive, right? This project's really hard right now. You're in a tough spot. Let me lead and help get you to another place, right? Nick was great with this. I was like, I can't do anything and I'm a complete failure. Take me off the show. And Nick came back and was like, oh, dude, like this project that you posted this week was actually super, super rad. Like, just keep posting stuff. Like, you get there when you have time, case studies, like, it'll be awesome. You have the work, just like keep going and eventually you'll get there. And having that positive outlook gets you out of the space that you are and like pushes to the potential of something else.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes along with all of these things as far as like, before we get into managing conflict and everything, you can think about leadership with other people. Are you communicating better? Are your written and verbal skills better? Like how, I think too, like when you're hearing from someone that might need that extra oomph or whatever it might be, just knowing how to get that through, showing empathy, showing like that's happened to all of us. The first thing we said a couple of days ago was that this idea that like we all feel that way. And it's like, even when we're at a point where we're showing our work off or whatever, it's like all we're doing is comparing ourselves to others. And every single person is doing the exact same thing. You can thank social media for that for sure, but like hold back a little bit, give yourself that stuff to say, wow, not only did I do great, but I'm going to do the same and I'm going to help other people kind of have that better thing there. But let's get into the next one, which was, go for it.
The great thing about us all thinking that we're like worse than everyone else is it technically puts us all on the same playing field, right? And we're like, oh man, I'm so far under them. And then someone else is like, oh man, I'm so far under this other person. And then we like look to our left and right and we're like, wait, we're all on the same thing. We've all lowered ourselves to the exact same level and now we're just equals.
Yeah. And the flip side too is social media, other things like us here and different things that share, we're finding out from every creative we're listening to. We all have that same thing. So how do we, just can we bury that one and move on? Cause we're all there.
I love that. I don't need advice about imposter syndrome. Just get over it and move on.
Just bury it. It's done. It doesn't even exist.
Okay, so let's talk working with others, right? Leading others, whether it's through projects or whatever. It's important to work as a team, right? And I know that you work directly with the team a lot, right?
Yeah, I think too, again, this is the best training you could ever get. If you're working somewhere and you get to be on a team, with a team, lead a team, you're new to a team, whatever it is, that experience is so valuable. You will take that the rest of your career because you can't just guess how that's going to be. You have to be in the trenches with the team. You have to have successes. You have to have the failures, all those things. So when I work with like the team I work with, I'm crystal clear on expectations, on timing. My motto is there should be no questions. There should be no questions. Like no one should be fired off and off to do some work unless they know every single expectation that's in my mind or in the client's mind. So having a team, working well with them is really, really great because now you've set not only are you a good leader with that, you've set them up to be a great little mini leader on their job and with their team or whatever they're doing.
Yep.
So there's that trickle down effect again. It always happens.
Absolutely. And I think that I try to lead, especially clients and others, if I'm hiring somebody for a project, to this place to where, like you said, there's no questions. But I love telling people, once we get there, like, you're going to think that it should have been cheaper and it was way easy, because the answer will be like, oh yeah, of course it should be that. And
Yeah.
I work very hard to lead the client there so that we don't have this meeting that's like the big grand reveal, that like we somehow are just done with the pitch and they're like, oh, is it? It's done. And it's like, oh, of
Yeah.
course it should have been this the whole time. Is that like, cool, we have led all the way through the process together, and we've landed here, and we've worked together as a team this entire time, and now we're here and we've done it.
Yep.
And we talked about the last one, have empathy. We talked about that before. Sometimes it's better to just say this sucks and help them move on than to be like, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's where you have to be a little bit of a mind reader, or maybe an emotional reader, and understand where people are with those things. But stuff's going to happen, and I think again it goes back to how will you react to it, and will you push a positive thing or a vulnerable thing out to someone so they can see the truth with that and realize, wow, we're all in this. No one's siloed in this world of, you know, a bad issue or a bad problem or a dilemma.
Feelings.
feelings.
All of the feelings. Okay, so we've covered, we're like cooking through this. I love this episode. Again, love this conversation. Let's keep going here and talk about, so we've talked about, right, leading others. We've talked about leading clients, and now we're going to talk about leading the industry. Ooh,
We want you all to be the leader in this industry.
Man, this is such a buzzword. Like, ooh, an industry leader. Like, it's such a buzzword.
Yes, we're not talking that, right?
Yes.
We're talking this idea that we are in a community, right? We have others that we can share with and learn from, vice versa. But the one thing to consider when you're here is this lineage of where you are when it comes to, there's plenty of people behind you and there's plenty of people ahead of you, right? In experience, in years, in status, in what else? Name, title, whatever, right? Yep. Recognition. So always remember that. No, everyone's got someone in front of them. Everyone's got someone behind them in this thing. This is where you get to kind of start thinking about, are you helping the industry along the way? Are we doing things where, like, how many times do you see when someone gives away work really cheap, right? And they say like, oh, I did this one super cheap. Or we have all these things out there that are doing logos for 50 bucks. Us as people in this industry can change that. We have to show that when we do the work right and we get in there and strategize and give you the best work possible, because again, we are the experts in that field, we're helping our industry so many different ways. So educating people that way, making sure when you're having conversations with other people to stand up and say, like, you know, I think that every once in a while, that's great. If you needed the cash, if there wasn't a lot of clients and you took something for the cheap, great. But the philosophy here is to remember, let's keep each other kind of checked, right? Educate each other, be a mentor to someone that's maybe a step below you or a few years behind you or whatever it is. Anything you can do to kind of do better for our industry. What do you think when you kind of zero in on this first kind of point?
I think the idea of educate or mentor, I think that like that should be because I think that we're constantly in a zone where we are educating, right? That the office hours audience, right? Nick and I educate pretty much every week and try to educate you on something. But then I also have mentors, right? That I look to Nick to help push the show further. I have a friend, Victor Davila, who's been on the show before, to give feedback, to help me grow in my career, to execute better ideas. That you have to be doing both of those at the same time. And then next up, I think, show off your work, right? That we're talking about leading the industry and the community. Show off your work, but also show off other people's work.
Yes. It's a two-way street with that one, right? I think as much as you want validation and likes and stuff when you post anything, think about the person that just liked your stuff. Are you doing the same back to them? Are you giving them words of encouragement? When I saw what a friend did the other day, I did a one on the, right on the feed, but I had to email them and say, like, this was absolutely Like, how in the world did you manage this with everything else you're doing and whatever? I'm like, wonderful, wonderful work. Like, that's the kind of stuff, showing work and supporting work, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That's it.
Yep. And I think that this is a big one. Think differently and be a pioneer. That's why I think that this episode hopefully is going to resonate with a lot of people, is this idea of the different take on the idea of leadership, right? That we're trying to give our perspective on leadership to the community to say, hey, it's not this ethereal idea, right? I'm sure you've seen a million podcasts and YouTube episodes about like, be a better leader. And Nick and I had the conversation. We're like, I think that we think a little bit differently on this than what we've seen before. Let's bring this perspective, right? And offer the perspective to the community. And that's hopefully helping you guys, lead you guys to a new place.
Yeah, I like to think of this one as the way of to keep the industry moving and to keep design and this in the forefront. The things that we can do as rather than following a trend, can you pioneer and do something totally off the wall and start a trend? Now, I know that's a hard task, and I'm just using it as an example, but everybody I talk to, when they see something and go, oh my God, like, when is that trend going to end? Like, well, maybe do something different with your next project, right? Do something original and cool and pioneering and new and fresh. Because to me, that's the stuff that really excites me, that on Instagram and other things, when I see someone really pushing something and I'm like, I have never seen that before. That's what I mean by this pioneering idea. And what does that do for our industry? Oh my God, it just keeps the engine running. It keeps, and let's face it too, friendly competition is great too. I see it amongst students, right? When you have that friendly competition, and you're trying to push the boundaries a little bit, oh man, that's exciting stuff.
Yep. And here's a free idea to anyone who's listening or watching.
Go ahead.
T-shirt line or a Instagram channel or something that's just called Trend Ender. There you go. And it's all just
and when it falls on there, you can't use it again.
That's it. Yep. It's all things that are subversive and against whatever the trend is. So someone steal that
who's
idea.
Starting that?
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. I don't have time.
I don't have time.
Here's a free idea. Someone take it. Someone make it, because I want to be a part of it. All right. So we're running out of time a little bit, but I want to touch on something real quick. And this is the idea of comfortability versus challenge. And this is in the idea of leading yourself. This is something that I've been going through, is this idea of feeling stuck, right? And so I've been feeling stuck in career. I need to be posting more, and I need to be over here doing this, right? And I feel like I'm just like, oh no, I'm stuck in a zone. But I was talking with someone and realized, had this conversation, and they kind of led me out of that zone, that said that it's not necessarily that you're stuck, you're just too comfortable to move, right? And there's a big shift, right? There's a big shift in your brain when you think about those two things, right? Being stuck is like, oh no, I can't get anywhere. And then realizing, oh, I think that I've become too comfortable to move, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, my work's, yeah, I do good work, whatever. Yeah, I'm happy with it. And you hit that zone. You're like, oh no, I need to challenge myself. That's the problem. I'm not stuck. I need to lead myself into a challenge. I need to reset a goal and then lead myself there. So that's just a mindset shift for you. We're going to glaze over that and keep going on, but I at least wanted to talk about that. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Dude, that is the strongest thing I think I've heard, because to me, I think after last year, we've all gotten into some comfort level of not having to, or doing only what was needed or something. And so like, whoa, I think everyone needs to hear that one. 100%. Yeah.
Yep. Take that, everyone.
Including myself, because I'm like,
nugget.
make a note of that one. That makes a lot of sense.
It was a good one. All right, so a couple more points here. Let's talk about allowing yourself to lead, right? We started out with like, should I be a leader? And if you hit that zone where you're like, yes, I should do it, and I'm going to be a specific leader to a specific thing, not chase an abstract idea of leadership. How do I allow myself to lead? This is a hard thing. I know, Nick, we both have talked about it on the show, that we like feel like we need to give ourselves permission to like to lead, which is weird, because like we should just do it. So let's talk a little bit about this. Where do we start?
So if you think about this idea of like, now we're talking just literally on our own. How are we leading ourselves? When we were talking about this prior to this, it was really important that we talked about this idea of like, you might just be working completely on your own. This leadership thing doesn't maybe apply to you in some way, but you can be the leader for yourself, and you can do these things. Just always remember, like we've said 1,000 times in this talk today, like, we don't have all the answers. You know, a true leader or someone who is just aspiring to be better is always looking for the better ways or the better ideas. I'm looking for shortcuts. I'm looking for things that are going to make my process smoother, faster, quicker, right? Because when things start building up, right, I'm like, I don't have the answers. I don't know how to make this better. So I make a note and I'd be like, how do I do something better to make this no longer a problem for me? So that's number one for me. How about for you? That kind of resonate with you?
I think yes. And it kind of goes into the second point for me, is it prioritizing your own growth and investing in yourself? That's been a huge thing for me, is what do I want to do? How do I lead myself to a better place? And then how do I leverage having led myself to that place to help lead other people to that place as well?
Totally.
Because I think that we need to lead ourselves before we start to lead others. And so I think that prioritizing yourself is not selfish. Sometimes it's really important. And so I think that's a big thing about being able to lead yourself. And last but not least, Nick, hit us with that last point.
Oh gosh, this goes back to what we just said in the earlier topic, pushing boundaries for yourself, meaning like, are you doing more than you did last week, last month, or whatever? And this is how you lead by example. Like, to me, sometimes that's the most encouraging thing when I see someone do it. And I think as teachers, it's the number one thing that's always in the back of my mind is, am I leading by the examples? Am I practicing what I preach? And I think it's a good stress and a good challenge to have all the time to make sure we're in check. But leading by example, let's end it on this. Be proud of what you've done, what you're doing. Don't ever look back and be like, man, I did this wrong or I wasted. So it's celebrating yourself on how you can lead in the future is kind of the way you unlock this. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's so important. And like I said, like just being able to lead yourself, but then don't focus on yourself. Focus on leading yourself with the hope of leading others, right? And we've talked about this before, that community is an investment that you invest into and then it pays off in the future. So invest in yourself. And then once you have the interest and you cash out on the investment of yourself, use that to then invest in other people. Then it will grow. Then they can cash that out. They'll invest in more people. And it just becomes this like cyclical interest. Some accountant somewhere is like, yes. Yes, I'm trying to speak as much as I can.
Love it.
Take that, Dave Ramsey. That's all I got. So I do want
to plug. And that does it for our Tony Robbins episode of the
Yes. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Be Better, and like and subscribe for leadership tips.
Oh, yes. And don't forget, smash that subscribe button.
Yes. All right. So I do want to talk about a couple more things, and that is our talk for today, which, wow, we went through a whole lot of stuff. If you guys liked this episode, it would actually mean a lot to us if you shared this one. We never asked you to share it, but for some reason, this episode, I'm like, guys, share this one. This is a good conversation to have.
And rewatch it, give it a thumbs up, all that fun stuff that, it exists for.
Yeah. And of course, join our Discord. Our Discord's a really great place. And I want to highlight kind of some of the stuff. And real quick, I just want to shout out, and I want you guys to do this because it's really important. Nick and I are going to go over and hang out in the Cabin Chat channel right after this because we want some feedback from you on some very specific things. So join our Discord right over here, bit.ly/OH Cabin Chat, and then go right here where it says Cabin Chat. Go into this voice channel right now. I know we're all watching and we're on Behance. Go over to Discord, go into the voice channel right now, and hang out in there for a second, and we're going to be hopping back in. And I kind of want to highlight one person that we saw the slide right before, and that is Katarina Jovanovic. Katarina, Nick, what happened here?
Brilliance happened here. I'm going to appreciate others' work here and show good leadership skills. I was just saying when he sent me this, I thought Andrew did this. I was like, oh, you did another. I'm like, this is awesome. And he's like, this is from homework. I was like, I love it. This is so good. Oh my God, I've never thought of the H and the O in that thing. And what a great little standalone icon.
Yep,
for
absolutely.
office hours.
Yep. And before we go, I have one more thing that I want to do. We missed something. Last week was Nick's birthday, y'all, and we missed it. So I'm going to go ahead and drag Nick over here real quick. We're going to go into our voice channel. Hi, voice channel. Can we sing happy birthday to Nick? Let's just do it. Nobody has their mics on, so I'm going for it. Join in if you want. Join our voice channel.
Oh my
Happy
God.
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nick. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Nick. We'll never miss it again.
Thank you, man.
What a
That was
great
awesome.
time. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Adobe Office Hours. We'll see you again next week. Let's cut back to that screen with our friend Katarina. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Oh, our mics are definitely still on because I didn't change it. Well, hey, everybody.
Where are we? Oh, we got to go to cabin chat, right?
Come on, yeah.